Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. So we are dealing with questions and answers, and I was dealing with a serious topic just before the break, and our sister called just to say that maybe I could touch upon the story of Yusuf alayhi salam in particular, to talk about the difficulties a person can face and what they need to do in return. If you do have some questions, please don't hesitate to ring. I know some of you say we don't like disturbing your flow. Trust me, it's all good. I don't mind my flow being disturbed. We have plenty of time, alhamdulillah, because now with Maghrib in its timing, I have my full session. So please don't be put off by my storytelling. Ring on 01274 214299. I have no qualms. Inshallah, I will pick up my story when I left off. We have Thursday as well, so don't worry about it. We have plenty of time. Your questions obviously are important. So we had now Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam, who's been accused of molesting the minister's wife. The minister doesn't believe her because the evidence is to the contrary. In fact, it points to his wife being the aggressive party, not Yusuf alayhi salam. But as she became the talk of the town, she didn't like to be the talk of the town, to be the gossip of the town. People constantly saying, what kind of a woman is she? That she's trying to seduce her own servant. You know, she's supposed to be an honorable woman. She's supposed to marry an honorable man. Why is she after servants for? And so as she's cutting, so she calls, invites these ladies, and as they're cutting fruit, they end up cutting their fingers when they look up and see such a handsome man. So Yusuf alayhi salam realizes now that he's in a bit of a situation. But we'll come back to what kind of a situation he is in shortly, because we've had somebody who's called in on 01274 214299. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Maulana Sahib, it's amazing the way you give an answer of my question, the point I raised, and ulmas are our prayer, and the way you explain is I don't have words to appreciate the way you explain everything, and it's just Hazrat Yusuf alayhi salam, he preferred to go into prison to
That's
save
right.
himself from all this.
That's right.
And how much awards he got in the end.
That's coming next, mashallah. Jazakallah khair. So yes, just as the sister said, that's exactly what happens. He realizes now that his life is very difficult in the world. Now, obviously, these women, all women have become aware of how handsome he is, how beautiful he is. And this is going to be a big test for him because he's a young man. He's not married yet. So he knows that any woman anywhere is going to try to attempt to come near him. And sooner or later, either he is going to make a mistake. He won't. Obviously, he's a Nabi, he's Ma'soom, but this is his thinking. Or what's going to happen is that he's going to be accused, one way or the other. And that's exactly what happened. The minister's wife turned upon him and said, you will now come to me, otherwise we now have all this group of ladies here who are going to be my witnesses, and they are going to say that you attempted to molest me. So at this point, Yusuf alayhi salam realizes, and when the minister comes and he explains the situation to him, he says, prison is better for me than this. He goes to prison for 7 years, accused of rape, a Nabi. 7 years he goes to prison. He serves time inside prison. Now, this is not prison like nowadays when we go to prison, where prisoners have rights, and there's a lot of rehabilitation which occurs, and prisoners are looked after, and they get good quality food, and they get good heating, and they get good lighting, and they get good beds, and they get, exercise time. They get time to read books. They have all the facilities. Many people say that, unfortunately, our justice system or our prison system is a bit too soft. And it's like a holiday camp for some of these people because they smuggle phones in, they smuggle drugs in, they have TVs in their cells. So in essence, it's like a flat. They got a TV, they got 3 meals a day, they got a nice bed, what's the problem? They've got it nice and easy. So we have a caller who's called in on 01274 214299. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Mufti Saab. Mufti Saab, I've got one lighter question that you don't need to answer, but one serious question that I'm actually ringing you for. So the lighter question is, we're just trying to guess your age, and we think you're in 40s, but you don't have to answer this question if you don't want to.
Sure.
Now the serious question is, I'm in my 50s, and in about 2 years' time, I'll be 55, so I can, get my pension from my workplace. The way I understand so far is however much the pension is, it's been made up from my weekly monthly salary and company's contribution, and plus the pension company putting that money into some various businesses and then making money on that. So it's made of three components. One is my personal money for my wage, and then the second is the company by law that have to top it up, and then the whichever financial organization holds that money, they then invest it. And so I'm definitely, right from the outset, I had this intention that I'm not going to get the money which is extra to both my money and my company's contribution. So because I think of this as interest, even though it's not interest as such, but because they gave us, when I signed up for it, they gave us the option of picking up the companies that the company wanted to invest money in, and so I deliberately didn't choose things like gambling and alcohol and kind of unethical businesses, as we call them. So I didn't pick them, but I still don't want to keep that money for myself. So my intention is to give that without the intention of a sawab to poor people. But the other two components, my own money and company's contribution to that pension, that, as far as I understand, is okay. That's halal for me to keep. But I also find out that if I take my pension, let's say at 55 or after 55, then of course the government charges tax on that. My question is very technical. So when I pay tax on that money, so let's say for the sake of argument that the total pension pot is 100,000, for example, and let's say 50,000 is my and company's money, the other 50,000 is the profit or interest or whatever you want to call it that I don't want to keep. When the government charges me tax, can I pay that tax from that money that I don't want to keep, or will I have to pay the tax on my money? So if my money is 50,000, do I pay tax on that 50,000? So whatever I get left, 40,000, 30,000, or whatever, or can I just have this intention that 50,000 is my money and the company's money, which is effectively my money, but the other money after tax, how much gets left over, I give for charity without the intention of Islam.
I got that. What was the light question? I missed the light question.
Yeah, it was about your age.
About my age? What did you guess? What did you guess?
I thought you were in your 40s.
MashaAllah. And somebody disagrees with you? Did somebody disagree with you?
No, my missus thought that, she did. She thought you were in 50. I thought, no, Mufti Saab looks younger than me, so I think you...
So when you say 40s, 40s is quite a long range. So early 40s, mid 40s, late 40s?
Mid 40s.
Late 40s, and your wife is saying early 50s or mid 50s?
She's saying early 50s.
Right. One of you is right. I'll tell you who's right. Jazakallah khair, my brother, for the call. MashaAllah. Okay, take care. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, we've got another caller who's come in now on 01274 214299. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear caller.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just wanted to ask you a question. I have 3 children, and two of them, mashallah, have turned out very good, the boys. But my girl, I cannot control her. She doesn't listen. I did everything, home education, took her back home, everything I could do, disciplined her. But suddenly she started work and got involved with the bad girls, and now I cannot control her. So what do I do to a 25-year-old?
Okay, Jazakallah khair, dear sister. Jazakallah khair for the call. Okay, so we've got a few questions there. Let's start with the light question first. Our dear brother is correct. I am in my late 40s. I've not hit 50 yet, sister, the wife of our dear brother. So, I need to keep the mehndi going because clearly I'm giving the impression I'm getting older. And I've been going to the gym regularly, so I don't know why. Maybe it's your TV, as maybe there's something wrong with it. Maybe it makes people age more. The other question was regards to the pension. With regards to the pension, now, as I understand it from your description, you made a contribution. Obviously, by law, the company, your employer, also must make a contribution. It seems then, from your description, that both those contributions were then invested. And you got to choose where you wanted these two contributions to be invested. So you ticked, obviously, those what we describe as ethical investments, meaning avoiding pornography, alcohol, gambling, and things of that nature. This obviously grew because you probably started paying your pension maybe when you were in your 30s, 40s, maybe even in your 50s, but you started giving your pension well before your pensionable age. So when you reach your pensionable age, as long as, the way the world, the economy is collapsing in the UK, let's hope it doesn't collapse completely, but you're hearing all sorts of scare stories that pension schemes are going to collapse and banks are no longer going to give mortgages, and more scaremongering as usual the media does, just to keep us frightened all the time and keep us under, because when you have a frightened society, then it's always going to be more obedient. When you have a less frightened society, then it's going to be less obedient because you think, why should I listen? But when you're being given these scare stories that this is happening, then you just become more attentive. It's the old, fight or flee. But in this case, obviously, it's more a case of flee, and you want to listen to what everybody's got to say. So if it is, as I've described it, that your contribution and the company's contribution was then invested, then all you receive is halal. Because that investment is your investment. This would be the same if you and I went into business together. So if I can call you Abdullah, my dear brother. So let's just say you're Abdullah and I'm Amjad. And we say we're going to go into business together. We're going to buy a house. And you say, fine. So I say, look, you give 20%, I'll give 80%. So you give 20% and I give 80%. And let's pretend that the house is worth 100,000. I know houses are not worth 100,000, but it's easy for the maths. Which means that over 10 years, you're going to give 20 grand. And over 10 years, I'm going to give 80 grand. So together, we've bought this house, it's 100 grand. This house then we sell, say, in 20 years' time. In 20 years' time, we sell this. And I say, you know what, I'm also going to give you my share as well. Right? I'm going to give you the 80 grand that I made, I'm going to give that to you as well. So I'm like your employer now. So you got your own 20%, the 20 grand you put in. You've got the 80 grand that I put in. And now that house is worth 170,000. It's not worth 100,000 anymore. Okay, let's say it's worth 200,000. So if that house is worth 200,000, you've made 100,000 pounds. Now that's halal for you. That's business. Okay, shares are exactly the same. Share is having a portion of the business. The difference in a house is we can see the share because obviously we get a sizable chunk. But when we buy unit shares in BP, for example, or in Thai Food Tea, or in a company that makes tables, then we get a very, 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 very small percentage of the share. We might get 0.01% of the business, but that means we own 0.01%. We own 0.01% of the buildings. We own 0.01% of its liquidity, the cash in its bank or kept on site. We own 0.01% of the machinery. We own 0.01% of the patent. We own 0.01% of everything. We own it. It is ours. If that company doubles in price because it's making good products and it's making more money, and now its share value, which was £1 a share, is now £2 a share, then our 0.01% has grown in value. That's halal for us to take. So there's nothing for you that you need to say that, oh, that doesn't belong to me. That's based on what I just described here, which is you give your amount, the employer gives their amount. That employer that's giving it to you is giving it to you as hadiyah. They're saying, here you go, because you've not worked for that. They're just giving you it. So they're giving you as hadiyah, and an employer can give hadiyah to an employee. So that you together, you've now got all this money. But that money just didn't go into a bank. If it just went into a bank, then anything you're making on it is interest now, because that is being used by the bank to give out as loans. Well, you didn't give it, you didn't put it in a bank, you invested that money in all these various businesses that you chose at the beginning, whether it was, whatever companies you chose, you invested that. So you invested your money, you invested your employer's money, whatever it total came to, into these companies. These companies' share value has increased. Now that you're collecting, your value of your money has gone up because you invested that money, and that's business. It could have gone down, I guess, but generally speaking, over long periods of time, everything's price increases. That's just the way the world is, isn't it? Very rarely do you see the share price of a company go down unless it's going to go bust. That happens, yeah, fair enough. But you won't have invested in everything in one company. So even if you invested in 10, 15, 20 companies and one company went bust, you've got 19 companies that have gone up. So overall, you're going to make money. That's just the way overall it's going to work. So I hope that explains that, my dear brother. Question number, the sister rang in, and this is a regular occurrence. What we find, for example, and especially with young ladies when we're raising them, we know the Sharia puts lots of stipulations on women. We know that. It's a fact. And less so on men, because the society is a patriarchal society. Men have been given the responsibility to look after women. So therefore, a man is required to go out to work. A man is required to travel. A woman, when she wishes to travel, has to be accompanied by a male. So you see that that's how it works. So when our young ladies are being raised and they're being given the Islamic view, and then they go out into the big wide world and they think, hold on a second here, this country gives me lots more rights than, or as they perceive it, than Islam does. I can travel, I don't have to wear a headscarf, I can choose to drink, I can do what I like. It then becomes very difficult to try to, give the Islamic narrative, unfortunately. Unless, obviously, there has been a strong tarbiyah. If there's been a strong tarbiyah, then it becomes innate in us. It's so difficult to move away from our Islamic narrative when we've had a good tarbiyah. If we don't have a good tarbiyah, unfortunately, even though we might have sent them to maktab, even though we might have sent them to madrasa, but our tarbiyah in our house was cultural Islam. What I mean by cultural Islam, that if we were Pakistanis, we had a kind of Pakistani Islam. So we might watch Bollywood movies with singing, dancing, all sorts, but then we'll tell our children, you can't go to a nightclub, you can't, listen to music. And our kids are like scratching their heads thinking, hold on, mom, hold on, dad, you watch Bollywood movies at night, and they've got singing and dancing and all sorts. And nowadays I hear, obviously I watched a movie or two when I was a young boy, when I was, 10, 11 years old. They used to come on Channel 4 or something. I don't watch them now, but when I speak to somebody, they'll say, the movies are pretty bad now. Before in the 80s and the 70s, that's showing my age, the movies were, kind of like family movies. Do you know what I mean? Now the movies are not family movies. Now they're a little bit, 18 plus rated. So, and yet I know families sit together and they watch those movies with their children. So children get confused, like, hold on, you're saying, Dad, that music is haram. Mom, you're saying music is haram. But look what you're watching. You're saying men and women shouldn't mix. But the movies you're watching, men and women are mixing freely. So they get confused. So this is why we need to have a sound tarbiyah in our houses. When we have a sound tarbiyah in our houses, then there is a better chance. I'm not saying 100% that it will work. There is a better chance, a higher probability. There's always going to be the challenges we face when our young people go out into the big wide world. I say to my son and daughters, now that they're grown up, I have a 25-year-old daughter, I have a 22-year-old son, and a 17-year-old daughter, and I say to them, look, guys, I did what I could as a father. Your mother did what she could do as a mother. You're now in the big wide world. We will always be there for you to support you. We'll always be there for you to guide you. We'll always be there if ever you need any words of wisdom, whatever. But inshallah, we've trained you enough. We've given you enough skills. We've given you enough to protect yourself of going out in the big wide world. At the end of the day, you mentioned that your daughter is 25. There's very little you can do for her apart from make dua for her. We need to go. Interesting conversations. Join us again tomorrow.